Hello and welcome to the romance track here at Continual. In the spirit of October, we are talking about things that go bump in the night, and tonight it is about monster romance. So before we dive into that very interesting topic, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Gini.
I'm sorry, starting with me?
You.
Oh, sorry, I heard Tiffany, and I'm looking. Tiffany on the panel? Why is no one speaking? Me. Hi. I'm the apparently unable to currently hear Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for Dog Books. I also write under a variety of pen names and in all lengths and genres, and I also write horror and paranormal, and in those I do indeed have creatures falling in love with each other and humans falling in love with monsters.
Okay. Cayce.
Hello, my name is Cayce LaCorte. I'm a fantasy author. I have a Medusa retelling coming out with Falstaff Books. I also work in publishing, doing book marketing for various publishers. And I am a big monster romance reader from all the different spice levels, everything from YA to not YA. So, yeah.
Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Mavison. I know when you see my name written, that is not at all how it looks. I'm an MM or gay romance author. Every subgenre, though, that you could think of, primarily fantasy, paranormal, sci-fi, a little horror too. So I started in the monster section of romance, even with occasional contemporary. I have over 24 titles out across novels, shorts, anthologies. If you Google me, I'm the only one, so pretty easy to find. Also at amandamavison.com. And I just had a release last Friday to kick off things into the spooky season, Gardening with a Ghost, which is part of a collaboration of multiple authors. And one thing I'm excited to talk about on this panel, hopefully, is that another collaboration I'm part of is literally all about monsters, horror, retelling classic horror stories, and just every single possible classic monster you could think of.
Oh, sounds good. Hansi.
Hi, I'm Hansi Oppenheimer. My company is Squee Projects. I'm a documentarian, and I've been studying fandom and fan studies and making documentaries about it for like 22 years. I'm currently putting an archive together, and I'm a total monster geek. I grew up, on famous monsters. I used to write letters to Fari Ackerman, so I'm here for this.
Okay. BL.
Hi, I'm Maxwell, and I write MM, contemporary, and paranormal. I have a lot of different types of paranormal. I have ghosts, I have a demon hunter, vampires. I just finished a Shifter series also that's a co-write. Mine, I was trying to think if I have anywhere it's a human falling in love with a monster, and I have more where they're both like two vampires, or one starts human and then is changed, so I'm really fascinated to hear what everybody else is talking about.
And I'm Gail Martin, and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. And that paranormal side, the creatures that might just be allies or enemies on the urban fantasy side, well, sometimes they get to be a lot closer than that on the paranormal romance side, and that's a lot of fun. So let's start with what's the oddest love affair you've written about with somebody who might qualify by some definition as a monster. Cayce?
Okay, I have not written the monster romance. I am a consumer of all this good stuff. Avid, actually. I just finished one. Let me see. I got my Kindle open to all the madness. Oh my goodness, I think I returned it already. It was A Soul to Keep. And I think that was one of the monstriest monster romances. And it was a very spicy, like erotica romance, but I think that was the least human I've ever read. Starts off slow, kind of didn't like the main female character in the beginning, but after a few chapters, he's adorable. He's like a demon entity that like has like a giant skull, wolf skull as his head. Like it's weird. It's weird. But by like halfway through it, you're like, oh, he's like a puppy. He doesn't know how to human, you know? This bond. And she was the outcast, the harbinger of evil in her village. So she has no social skills. Like she's starting at like abandoned feral. And so it was actually it was cuter than I thought it would be. So I think that has to be it was never like a human turned into a monster. It was never like, he was not very humanoid. And and you know what? The author made it work. So
kudos.
I actually
Amanda?
cried.
I'd have to say most monster-like monster one is one of my shorts, The Tea House, because it is very much eldritch horror. But I was trying to take that a little bit further than, oh, you can kind of envision Cthulhu and tentacles and all these various things. There's still like form there. No, I wanted this to be true. You can't actually fathom them with human eyes. So when, without getting too descriptive, obviously, when things actually get to a point where this human character and monster character are together, he almost has to keep his eyes closed because he would, fall to that madness if he were to actually see what he looks like, because there's dimension to it and color to it and mouths and eyes and tentacles and all these things that we just can't fathom. So that was a lot of fun to try to hit a note that was a little different than like something tangible we can normally touch and deal with ourselves. And it's my most successful short. Like I do shorts every once in a while for specials and holidays. The Tea House, yeah, it's I love it. It should be on KU as well. But I just had so much fun diving into the horror aspect of it too, but still somehow keeping it sweet. And it was a fun exercise for me.
I kissed Cthulhu and I liked it.
Yeah. Exactly.
How about you, Hansi?
I've always been in love with the monster, I mean, the monster, right? If you're a monster kid, I mean, I remember seeing Frankenstein at 3 and like, I sympathized with the monster. And, Lance Henriksen or Bill Paxton in Near Dark, like, oh, yes, make me a vampire, please. Or Tony Todd as Candyman. Every time he says, be my victim, I'm like, okay.
That voice.
I know. So those are some of mine. Yeah, I'm easy. Give me a monster with a sexy voice, I'm in.
Okay, BL.
I would say my Stone series, because the first one I wanted it to be, it was a gargoyle that his fated, they're all fated mates. I kind of combined those two. And so his fated mate is a human. So he hates it because he is eternal and he can't handle that his fated mate has died. He's seen this happen time and time again. So for years, he just avoids him. And then they end up, their story, they end up together. That's the first book. The second book, the enemies of the gargoyles are vampires. So I had a vampire and a gargoyle who are fated mates, and how they're, the gargoyle's like, okay, I can deal with this. And the vampire's like, are you even kidding me right now? Like, how could this even have happened? And then the third book is 2 gargoyles. And what I tried to do was make, even though they're fierce warriors, they're built basically to fight, but they're very innocent about love. They don't know anything about that. So that for me was a lot of fun, kind of exploring how, even though they know how to fight, they know how to do all that, but they're really clueless about how to just be with someone and how to just live a life. So I say that's probably my most monstery monster.
Okay. I mean, the term monster is in the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, it's actually a very prejudicial term. And I think the closest I have to something that isn't like 2 shifters in love, because I have the whole Fox Hollow series, but I've got a novella, Light My Way Home, that is about a lighthouse keeper who kind of went into being a lighthouse keeper in part because he's always seen ghosts, and people always thought he was weird and he wasn't real good at the social stuff, but the ghosts didn't care. And if you're a lighthouse keeper, you don't see a whole lot of people anyhow. And he finds a ghost of somebody who was killed in a mob hit 70 years ago, but the ghost has persisted and he still knows who he is, and there's still a lot of personality left, and they fall in love. And so, you know, this requires some creativity because one of these partners is incorporeal. So how does this work? Well, you know, fortunately, Monty can not only just see ghosts, but he as a medium can be inhabited by a ghost. So that means that anything anybody does is fair game for both of them, and therefore it works. But it was fun thinking through that whole process of, okay, how would this work? How would ghost sex work?
Troubleshooting.
Troubleshooting.
Yeah. I mean, this is what we do all day, right? We sit around and think about these things, tentacles and gargoyles and ghost sex, you know. Ginny, how about you?
By the way, that was some darned nice tap dancing there, Gail. That was some really good tap dancing. It's sort of, I'm like trying to think, because in my Gemma Chase collection, I've got a lot of intriguing pairings of humans with whatever, but my my horror background is really very Lovecraftian. Most of the horror I write, probably 50% or more, is Lovecraftian. And my two favorite stories from Lovecraft are both short, Pickman's Model and The Outsider. And I do Pickman's Daughter is in Secret Guide to Fighting the Elder Gods, so that's a whole thing. But I hated The Outsider because it always made me cry, because of the whole point of that story is it's a ghoul and he wants to see the light. He's a sweet, pure, simple soul. Maybe he was evil thousands of years ago, but he has no memory of that. And he claws his way up into the light and he sees a party and everybody starts screaming, and he looks at them and realizes they're all terrified of him because he's this horrible monstrosity. And he slouches back to the depths, which is where he belongs. And it was so unfair. It remains the most unfair story for me that I've ever read. And I loved it, but hated it because I just feel for him. So in A Dark Fantastique, I wrote Outsiders, and basically it's a take on that, where this ghoul is crawling up and everything. And then he gets to the party and it's all these beautiful people, and the most beautiful man is treating the most beautiful woman horribly. Basically, Mr. Hansen is the monster and our ghoul is actually the hero, and he saves the day, he saves her, he's trying to run away, and she comes after him and she takes his hand, his disgusting, horrible hand in hers, because as far as she is concerned, she's been praying to God and he is her deliverance. And so they take her, he takes her with him, they live as ghouls forever. And one day when she dies, then she'll be a ghoul with him, right? They'll be together forever. So that was definitely, I mean, he's monster, ichor, all this other stuff, what he sees himself in his description. I mean, this is really, you know, an eldritch horror. But he had the sweet, sweet, pure soul, and that, as far as I'm concerned, makes him the hero. So
now, we used to think of the vampire as a monster, the werewolf as a monster, and now those have been kind of domesticated. The werewolves are cute and fluffy. The vampires, you know, drink.
Sparkle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're just hot. I don't know if they're fluffy, but they're hot.
Yeah. Well, I was watching Buffy last night and watching that Angelus transformation where he goes from really cute guy to kind of pushed in, smushed in forehead, and thinking, okay, that's not sexy at all. How did we get to making the monsters into love interests? And what does that say about us? Amanda?
Well, I think you also come across the people, though, that, what did you start with? What was the most monstrous versions that we wrote? So clearly there's a sense for a lot of us where the pushed in, smushed in weird vampire face, actually, I still find very sexy. So there's a lot of us who are like, I'm kind of into that monstrousness. Like, it's not going to turn me off. Like, certain series that I've read where it's like they're describing these fantastical things without any human element to them at all. I mean, not even getting to the intriguing anatomy for sexual stuff, but just like the way they look is so different. I think it's, what does that say about us that we don't even need them to be pretty? I know there's some of it where you obviously do that, where you want to domesticate them and make it so they're nicer. I think it's not, they don't need to be pretty, but they need to be approachable and redeemable and more human than, what Gini was saying, than like the monstrous, beautiful people. I think that's really what's going to pull me in. And sometimes you like walking that little edge of darkness, edge of danger, where regardless of what the monster character looks like, you're kind of pulled into that. I mean, that's one of the reasons that Dracula persists, right? To segue my way into talking about the other collaboration I'm part of. It's Monsters and Mayhem, an MM horror collection. There's 11 different authors doing every possible classic horror character you could think of. And some of them are really dark and have lots of warnings for them. I haven't read them all yet. And some of them are fluffier, sweet romance. One that's already out, In Darkness and Dank by K.L. Hires, is an adaptation of Creature from the Black Lagoon. And the description is monstrous, sure, but gorgeous. Like, I was immediately like, yes, of course, the other main character is totally in love with him. He sounds beautiful, but he's got claws and fangs and all these monstrous things. And it's the connection that the characters have, even when there's that edge of danger, that kind of pulls you in. And mine is the Dracula retelling. Mm-hmm. And I try not, yes, I'm telling it in an MM romance way. And I will, spoilers, I wanted a happy ending here. But I didn't want to make him too fluffy. I didn't want to make any aspect of it too fluffy, because I feel like that takes away from the original allure of the character. So I think it's a mix of, you still want a little danger, you still want a connection, a humanity there, so that you can really have a good parallel with whoever the actual villains are supposed to be in a story. And that's always going to be appealing to me, whether they have crazy faces or are still gorgeous.
Okay. Hansi?
Well, in fact, it tied in, because the first thing I was thinking about the glamour of the monster was, the 1932 Dracula. I mean, and Bela Lugosi had played that on stage, and women just went crazy over him. So, I mean, I think, and even in the book, he's much more horrifying, but people still fall under a spell. So I think that's just in there. I think, right, it's just part of monsterism that we're attracted to the dark.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me, the appearance isn't as much as I'm not big on being eaten.
Yeah, no zombies. So, no zombies.
Yeah, setting the bar kind of low there.
Yeah.
But I think there's a long tradition, whether you call it romance or not, of the not having a beautiful hero on the outside, but the beauty is in the soul. And I'm thinking about Quasimodo, and sure. I'm thinking about Beauty and the Beast, and so many of those where you can think of that as a monster sheerly on the external features, but there are a lot more monstrous people, and that's usually the point of the book. And I think that is a lot of what we find in these monster romances, is really the idea of, please see me for who I am, please love me as I am, please don't try to make me over into something else that looks like everybody else. And when the person or the creature finds someone who can love them as they are for them, then that's a very satisfying romance, because we all want to not have to put on masks and pretenses in order to be accepted. And I think that's part of the power of monster romance. Cayce?
I think there's like a direct pipeline between our YA, our younger love of morally gray villains, and monster romance. because you start out with the bad guy who's not really that bad, but he is bad, but maybe he has a good reason. And yeah, he's the Spike. We don't like him. We're all talking Buffy. We don't, he's so bad Spike. No, he's not terrible. He could be worse, you know, and start justifying. And I think that leads, you know, into like the kind of the directly, there's a pipeline leading directly into the monster romance. And I think what you had made a really good point, Gail, and I talked about this previously at that panel on DragonCon we were talking about, that a lot of the poly romance, the reverse harem that's so popular right now, it's not popular, I'm in my opinion, because of the erotica, because of all that. That's great, it's wonderful. But what it is shifter, talk about in a shifter context. You have a group of alpha males, very dominant personalities, putting all of their shit aside, for the wants and needs, protection, whatever, of the main female character. And I think that's the fantasy, is being put first, being put, you know, they see you for who you are. And I think a lot of these main characters we're talking about are also broken in some extent, to some extent, before they even meet the monster. I don't know if I've read one yet where it's a fully normal, well-adjusted human being that doesn't need therapy and that meets a monster and it's like, hey, how you doing? These are people who are damaged and are more likely to see past the exterior and see that humanity.
Okay. BL.
I kind of think it's similar to like the bad boy. You know, you want to think that, oh, you can change him. He's not going to kill you. He's going to kill everyone else, but not you. And, you know, I don't know. I watch a lot of paranormal. You know, I don't do a lot of horror anymore because it messes with my brain too much. But I love Twilight. And that's what got me into writing, you know, so I totally credit Twilight for a lot. And then I read Midnight Sun. And the difference between Edward and, you know, from her, how she sees Edward to how he is in Midnight Sun is night and day. And, you know, he comes off in Twilight as this, you know, he's innocent, he's a virgin, he's, you know, he would never hurt Bella. But like in the meadow scene in Midnight Sun, when she grabs his hand and then he runs off, he's afraid to look because he's afraid he's torn her arms off because he knows how strong he is. And she has no clue. She's just like, oh, you know how most of us have read it. You know, she's more like, oh, I upset him. You know what I mean? She's not even thinking the way he's thinking. Like, does she still have all her body parts? So that, to me, I loved that in Midnight Sun, how different he was. But it's, you know, it's very much that way in Twilight too, where, you know, Jacob's the good guy and she doesn't want to go with the good guy. She wants the bad guy, that everybody's like, oh no, you don't want Cullen, you know, he's weird. So, and I love that. I love the bad guy that's not really bad and that's, you know, turns out to be totally different than you expect him to be. So that's my opinion on that.
Now, my Brady Bunch squares twisted all around, so I want to make sure I got everybody on that
Didn't
round.
get me. Can you
Okay.
I kept flipping in and out, so I don't know what's going on with my internet connection. So you didn't get me, and I don't remember the question.
Well, I don't either.
What started us? I think what started us, right? And
Well, it was.
What's the appeal of those monstrous
right,
characters?
okay, yeah. Okay, well, Gail, you and I are like the same age. We got married in the same year and everything else. So you're going to nod for sure. I saw Frank Langella as Dracula really young.
I remember that.
And I was,
Yes.
why isn't everybody lining up for this man? Right? Like, I volunteer as tribute, right? So I was kind of trained to see them as handsome. So anytime I saw Dracula in my mind was handsome. The scariest thing I ever saw was Nosferatu. I never actually saw the movie, but I grew up about an hour north of Los Angeles and in Ventura, which is between LA and Santa Barbara. And UCSB used to always do a film festival. and we got the program, and
The original or the Kinski?
the original. And they were doing it as a film festival, and there was one picture, and you could not love that. That is not something I fall in love with. Even though I'm trying to write a short story, Nosferatu, my love. We'll see if I can manage it. But that was the most. That's the boogeyman I see at night, every night. That is not Frank Langella. Okay, I want Frank Langella. I
Max
don't want
Shrek.
Nosferatu. I don't want the creep, right? It's terrifying. He's got scissors. I mean, it's just a terrifying thing. But I think it's like everybody said, we might, everybody wants, chicks dig bad boys, number one. And number two, you want that belief that you're the one. You're the one who can change them. And in reality, that almost never happens. So enjoy it in books where you get to do it right. Because girls and boys, that does not happen in real life. They change if they want to, not because you want them to.
I just saw a film that was based on a Grady Hendrix book or story,
Yeah.
My Best Friend's Exorcism, which is kind of a romance. I mean, it's a queer romance, but it's really charming.
Mm-hmm. Well, and going back to what Ginny said about Frank Langella, even before that, I was in love with Barnabas Collins on Dracula.
Oh yeah, Dark Shadows.
Me too, right? Dark
Yeah,
Shadows. Yeah.
Who
After
was such a pathetic vampire character. Point of trivia, just to show you that people age differently nowadays. Jonathan Freed, when he played Barnabas Collins, was the same age that Jensen Ackles was at the end of Supernatural. There's a bit of a gap there.
There's a
Yes,
gap.
there's a gap there. But I mean, I was deeply in love with Jonathan Freed, with Barnabas Collins, because he was such a wounded hero. And he wanted to be good. And I think that's definitely part of the monster appeal. Now, how has that monster story changed over time? I mean, we have so many examples. We have iZombie, where the main character is a zombie, and there's a love story there. We have all the vampire stories. We have all, if you go through the Korean paranormal, you have My Girlfriend is a Gumaho, and you have people falling in love with all kinds of ghosts left, right, and center. What does this say about the state of romance and our expectations or our disappointments? Hansi?
Well, I'm just wondering what the percentage of, romance is that is paranormal and, supernatural, compared to, because I work remotely, so I have the TV on all day, and after Golden Girls is over, it always goes into like the Hallmark movie, which is where I change the channel and put on Bob's Burgers on a loop. So there are definitely, like, I've watched, a couple of minutes into the Hallmark movies. There's definitely like these romances that are like, I don't understand them at all. People meeting and it's the fall and they're like picking pumpkins and I don't know what they're, there's no monsters, there's nothing. So, I mean, I think this is what we love. But I don't know what this is, what this really says about culture, or I just think more people get to make more monster films now.
Don't forget that while paranormal romance is a subspecialty, on the contemporary modern day romance, you've kind of got the same thing with the assassins, the bad boys, the mafia guys, the biker gang guys, the bad people who we would normally classify as at least FBI most wanted, if not monsters, and they get their day in the sun. So it's that bad boy thing again. Cayce?
I blame cartoons. Fern Gully, Smog Monster, you know what I'm talking about. Beauty and the Beast, all of these things, X-Men with the mutants, all of these like formative years for a lot of people my age. A lot of these cartoons went from, Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and things like that, and they became very monster focused, very supernatural driven, superhero driven, otherworldly things. Even Captain Planet and the Unitard, it worked for him. You've got all of these cartoon characters at a very formidable age that are not human or otherworldly or mutants or things that make you kind of go, am I attracted to? I'm attracted to that. And then as we get older, we want to write about it. And I also think there's people got tired of good guy, bad guy, good wins, the end.
Oh,
And
yeah.
hence we've always had the morally great characters. We've always had the Clint Eastwood's the bad guy, but he's got a heart of gold. We've always had those. I just think you saw them. A lot of people found out that was a lot of what consumers wanted, and it really just kind of spiraled out of control, but like in the best way possible.
Yeah,
Okay.
because like I did speak with some friends about it, and it was like, it wasn't about Captain America. It was all about like Loki or Bucky.
Right.
Yes.
They were more interested.
Yeah, 100% yes.
I still want Cap. Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
Or both.
It's hot.
But I'll say both.
Good
Definitely.
heavens. Okay. I'm still Cap's girl.
BL?
I think too, because now you can go on and you can find all kinds of paranormal, true paranormal, you know what I mean? It's so much, there's so much more of it now available to watch, where when I was a kid, you didn't have that. I read every ghost story they had at my library because I was from a really small town, but you didn't ever see that kind of stuff. You might have the Ghost and Mrs. Muir, or
I love that show and
they
movie.
didn't have, it wasn't the same type of thing. Like they would have Ancient Aliens, I think was on then, and Believe It or Not, and they might have like one ghost story after 5 shows, or you know what I mean? You just didn't have the opportunity to see it all that much. And I feel like now people are much more, I don't know if they're more open-minded about it or what it is, but I feel like more people are interested in it and want to see it than when I was a kid, because like I said, there were ghost stories, there were lots of ghost books, but there really was not the movies and stuff. Most of them were horror, not so much paranormal romance. It was never that they were falling in love. It was like I remember seeing like Count Yorga Vampire, and it was so gory. And I was like in 7th grade and like horrified by this, so that, I think that was like one of the first vampire movies I saw. And I was like, my God, I never realized vampires were this horrible, So I think a lot of it's just changed because we have more access to seeing it. So it kind of, and then with like Supernatural, where you have these cute guys, and even though they are dealing with monsters, not all of the monsters are bad, so they don't just automatically kill them. So, some they do, and then they feel bad because they killed them. So.
Well, and as somebody has pointed out, from an outsider's point of view, if you're not watching the story from Sam and Dean's perspective, they're 2 psychopaths who drive around in a muscle car,
Yes,
digging up graves. I mean, we know and love the boys, but let's be honest, that's kind of what they look like to the small town people. Yeah. Ginny?
I think some of it goes back to 57 channels and nothing on. We've now got hundreds of channels.
yes.
And you have to fill that time. And so more and more people they'll grab anything, right? It's like not our stuff yet. And we all say, why not? But there's so many places now willing to grab something and throw it up and try it. And also self-publishing has allowed a lot. I will tell you point blank that a decade ago, Harlequin was like, absolutely no bad boys, no rock stars, no bikers, no this. They wouldn't take any. They weren't wild about billionaires either, because these were perceived as things that was just too ridiculous and no
Taboo.
one believe it. Okay, but because of indie publishing, I should say, everybody can do what they want, and the readers who don't care where it came from are like, oh yes, please. Sons of Anarchy turned bikers into people with souls, right? And so you can believe that Jax maybe isn't the horrible person he is. But in a book, he can choose. You get to see all of that, and the author gets to control what's happening, just like the writers control what's happening in the shows. So I think it is, there's so much more availability, and that needs content. And so people were allowed to write what they wanted to write, and put it out there, and lo and behold, wow, other people like it too. So I think that, and we're more permissive, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. There are lots of other things. I mean, you know, 20 years ago, all the MM would have been, you'd have had to be hiding it, right? And now everybody, you know, y'all can be out there doing it and making money and proudly writing what you want to write. And 20 years ago, that would have been underground. So a lot of it is changing in society too. But I think the most of it is there are so many ways to get entertainment, and every one of them requires content, that everybody gets to throw up what they want, and you get to find what you like.
Yeah. Amanda?
I think it's all the different adaptations of the classics. Like when you think of classic horror, the purpose of those old black and whites was to scare you. It wasn't meant to do anything else. And if Bella was also sexy, then so be it. Oh, and Christopher Lee, I don't think we've mentioned him yet. Another sexy Dracula, right? Like people didn't expect him to make this character sexy, and then here he comes super tall and gorgeous, you know. And all of a sudden, as these adaptations were changing over the decades, they started to shift to making us empathize with them. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the Bram Stoker's Dracula Gary Oldman one was the first that ever introduced that idea that Mina was the reincarnation of his lost love.
No,
not the first. So who first did that?
It's been done so many times, so many times.
Because I thought, but it's not in the original book. That's not part of the original story anyway. But think about that: as soon as you have the opportunity to adapt some classic horror, millions of people have done this idea. And why? To give him some aspect of, okay, it's not just horror anymore. Now it's suddenly actually gothic romance. He doesn't feel 100% like the bad guy. He has more dimension now. He's a little bit more interesting. And I think that's part of it too. It's like we want to make, even if they are the villains, even if the monsters are the villains, we want them to have more dimension to them. And that's just naturally led to, and now we want to romance them completely. and now I want to see a version of this story where they win. Like that's where my brain went anyway.
Well, I mean, think of Hannibal.
Yes, why? He's the bad guy, but you kind of want him to win.
You just fall in love with him. Just he's so like civilized and sexy.
He's a likable guy.
And he cares about Clarice. I think why we like him is he actually cares about Clarice.
I meant the show, the Mads Mikkelsen.
Oh,
yes,
that was really. I mean, they took it right.
How are you not
right
going to want Mads Mikkelsen?
Yeah,
exactly.
Again, like Frank Langella before him. I don't care what that actor is doing. He was the bad guy in, you know, Daniel Craig's first James Bond, and I'm just like, but is he really bad?
Yeah, that's right.
He's got this eye thing, you know. So
nobody likes a villain. I'm sorry, nobody likes a villain that's just all evil, bad. Like no tragic backstory.
They're not interested.
I'm just the personification of all bad things. And it's like, you have to make them balanced. There has to be something they care about, even if it's just their cat. Burn the world down, save the cat. You know, then you're like, oh, it's a cat.
Yeah.
You know, you need to give them some more dimension. So
I think it's interesting that we're getting a reboot of Interview with the Vampire, because those books were very instrumental, I think, in the shift to seeing the monster as the wounded guy, the hero. He's not all bad. And I also want to give a shout out there to Laurel K. Hamilton and Sherilyn Kenyon, because I think that those books also were very instrumental in proving that the monster as good guy would work, and monster as romantic lead could work, and also brought a whole lot of readers into that paranormal, dare I say, vein, looking for more books to consume, which we have all been very happy to provide for them. Well, folks, we are getting to the end here, and I want to make sure we give everybody a chance to say not only where people can find you online, but what you're working on. And if you have a recent, new, or upcoming release, please tell us about that. Everybody got a chance on the last question, right? Okay. Well, let's start back again with Cayce and go around. What you're working on and where do we find you?
Like I said, I'm working on my mythology retelling, the story of Medusa and Perseus, but from Medusa's point of view. I'm working on that right now for Falstaff. It should be out in probably in about another year before John gets around to it. But also you can find me on TikTok. That's kind of where I live.
Oh,
It's
good.
at
Me
book,
too.
at book_mama. That's my main account. That's what I use, not just for book stuff. That's just my personal account for everything. And it's just me like basically causing chaos.
Cool.
That works. BL.
I'm working on right now. I'm part of a group series with rock stars, the Road to Rocktoberfest. So my book Blinding Light comes out on the 11th. I've never written a rock star romance, and I feel like I'm reliving my youth, as you know, because I went to a lot of rock concerts. So I'm using this valuable information for that. And then I actually just had a release last week called The Things We Find. And it's a paranormal romance that it's a little bit of a paranormal or urban fantasy too, because it's cursed objects. And, you know, they're basically haunted with spirits. You don't really know yet if it's a demon or just what it is. You can get in contact with me. I'm always on Facebook, BL Maxwell Writer. And I'm on, my website is blmaxwellwriter.com.
Okay, Ginny.
GiniKoch.com. I'm on Facebook a lot as Ginny Koch, Hairspray and Rock and Roll, and author of the Alien Catherine to the Cat series. I have a newsletter, Hook Me Up, that you can sign up from Hairspray and Rock and Roll, or how to do it is at the bottom of those pages of my website. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. My most recent release is actually finally a good audio version of the first book in my Alien series, Touched by an Alien. So that's out now. I'm very excited about it. And for those keeping score, swear to God, Aliens Like Us is almost ready to go to my editor. Don't think. Watch this space.
Amanda.
AmandaMavison.com is the easiest way to find all my stuff. I'm always Amanda Mavison or Amanda Mavison Books pretty much everywhere, including TikTok. I'm also there. I just had a release on Friday. I think I mentioned Gardening with a Ghost is my contribution to the Haunted Love collaboration. So all of the authors did ghost human romances. A Delicious Descent is my Dracula retelling. That one comes out on Halloween. I was so excited to be able to snag the Halloween date for a Dracula retelling. I was like, nobody else grabbed this. That's also part of a collaboration. Again, Monsters and Mayhem is 11 other authors. Both of those collaborations are in mid-process. Like there are some that are out and some that are still coming, leading all the way through October. And I think there's one in the Monsters one that's still in November. And then I have a very busy end to the year because I haven't released in November and December too, because I'm insane. Both of them are the third books in separate series. November is The Bard and the Fairy Prince, which is the third in my fantasy series. And Wayne on Harvest Moon is the third in my paranormal shifter vampire series.
Nice. Hansi.
You can find me at Squee Projects on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And I also have a website, squeeprojects.com. And I'm currently working on an essay for a book about the boys with Lindsay Vernis. And I've been, as I said, shooting interviews with women in fandom for like 22 years. So one of the universities is interested. So I'm actually like archiving my whole collection from 20 years and going back through all the interviews and seeing what can go to a popular culture studies program. And I'm trying to talk the Horror Writers Association into letting me do a documentary about them, because I was at Nikon and it was just so cool, so awesome. I love hanging out with writers and horror writers especially. So yeah, we'll see.
Okay. I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbrice.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on all the social media platforms. My most recent release is Sins of the Fathers in the Kings of the Mountain Morgan Brice series, and that has a lot of paranormal aspects. I'm doing a Halloween flash fiction for Funkin' Fiction blog that'll come out just before Halloween. And the next Gail book will be we have a Joe Mack book coming out, Spellbound, in late October. again, lots of scary stuff, but no romance. And Charon, which is the second in the Night Vigil series. Again, lots of scary stuff, but no romance. If you want to ship the guys, you can ship them. I never define one way or the other how good friends they are. So have at it. But that's the second in the Night Vigil series, and that comes out as soon as we get the edits done. So lots going on. Of course, I'm pretty easy to find here at Continual. So thanks to all of you for being wonderful panelists tonight. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more romance coming up on Continual, so we'll see you online.